Hello, this is Phil Kain, the host of the Wolverine Fan Therapy podcast, here to preview Michigan's first opponent of the 2023 football season, the East Carolina Pirates. This is probably Michigan's best non-conference opponent, all due respect to UNLV and Bowling Green. East Carolina is probably Michigan's best opponent, so we're going to preview that game today on the Wolverine Fan Therapy podcast. Thanks for joining us. Okay, welcome to the Wolverine Fan Therapy podcast. This is our preview of Michigan's first opponent in 2023, the East Carolina Pirates. So I was prepared to scare Wolverine fans and put us on upset alert, but I think that would be going a little bit far. Michigan is a 36 point favorite. That is a dangerous spread against this team, but let's get into who the East Carolina Pirates are. Look, for Michigan fans, and I've heard a lot of grumbling from Wolverine fans about the non-conference schedule. Last year's non-conference schedule was obviously pretty weak due to some scheduling issues, and this year's is also a little bit weak. But this East Carolina team this is a real football program. They've been to a bowl game the last couple years. They hold their own when they play upper echelon opponents. They don't get blown out. Last season, they won some impressive games, winning at BYU. That's not easy to do. They played a very, very good Cincinnati team and only lost by 2 points at Cincinnati. This team finished 8-5, won a bowl game against Coastal Carolina pretty convincingly. They don't get pushed around. Unlike the teams that Michigan played in the non-conference schedule last year, which were breaking in new coaches. Norvell was a new coach at Colorado State. Hawaii was a program that was, with the new coaching staff. Connecticut ended up going to a bowl game, but they were pretty rough in the early season. East Carolina is not that. Their coach, Mike Houston, is in his fifth season at East Carolina, and he knows how to build a football team, and he knows how to coach at that level. Having said that, East Carolina lost quite a few key players to the transfer portal, players that went up, transferred to SEC schools and other places. But East Carolina has an effective and good defensive line, and Michigan is not going to be able to – I don't expect Michigan to be able to just run roughshod over them. So Wolverine fans, if you're expecting a game where, like last year's non-conference, where it's 14-0 before you even have time to realize that what's going on, and the game's 21-0 at the end of the first quarter and 42-3 at halftime, I'm not anticipating that type of game at all. I could easily see East Carolina hanging with Michigan for most of the first half and possibly even into the second half. I could see a 14-7 game. There's probably a 50-50 chance that Michigan has a turnover in the first half. I could see J.J. McCarthy throwing an interception. East Carolina has two returning experienced safeties, so they're not going to get pushed around. Now, maybe the saving grace or the reason why I just see East Carolina actually having a chance to win the game pretty unlikely is they're breaking in a new quarterback. They had a 4-year starter last year. He's gone. So they're breaking in a new quarterback. They haven't even announced who it's going to be. Their best running back transferred. Their offensive line is kind of being remade. They had some transfers. They got a couple of transfers in from MAC schools, Ohio, I believe. So their offense is probably not going to be able to move the ball very effectively, regularly against Michigan. But having said that, they're going to score. Michigan's not going to shut out East Carolina, and this is not a game where I see 49-3. That's why I don't like the Michigan to cover a 36.5 point spread. I think that's pretty dangerous. Could they? Yeah, sure, but it could end up being like a 49-17 game, something like that. And so that line I would stay away from. And like I said, it wouldn't be surprised me if at the end of the first quarter, this game's 7-7 or 7-3. Michigan, they're not going to just against those teams last year. Basically, Michigan scored on almost every possession. Michigan's going to punt the ball in this game, and they're going to East Carolina's going to be able to stop them. Their defense is pretty good. They went toe to toe. Really, last year in last year's opener, East Carolina dropped a heartbreaker to North Carolina State, 21-20, where they missed an extra point and a field goal, and I think North Carolina State had to block a punt to score a touchdown. So, again, East Carolina is a well-coached football team, and they know how to play football. They don't seem to be great at special teams, but I expect them to put up a real fight against Michigan. So Wolverine fans expecting that this is just going to be kind of a scrimmage game, a joke. I don't see that at all. Then of course you factor in the fact that Jim Harbaugh's not going to be there, Michigan's head coach, and their offensive coordinator, Sharon Moore, is not going to be there. So how is that going to impact the game? Well, it's not a positive for Michigan. I can't believe anyone would think it's going to mean Michigan's performance is going to be better. The play calling is going to be handled by Eric Campbell, a quarterback's coach, who is going to be elevated to offensive coordinator for this game. So it'll be interesting to see. On the Michigan side, things that I'm looking for, other than the obvious stuff, it would be nice to see mistakes held to a minimum. It is the first game, so you expect false start penalties. You expect the passing game to be, just not precise, a little bit ineffective, overthrowing, deep routes, missing some open receivers. I expect those kinds of things in the first game. And then breaking in new players. I think some of the things that Wolverine fans are going to stand out. There's going to be a lot of new players. Looks like Michigan's starting safeties, Rod Moore and Makari Page could be out for this game. So there's going to be some new names. Keon Sabb for one. Zeke Berry I expect to play in the safety. Mike Sainristil probably will play some safety. So there'll be some new names. There's some new players that via the transfer portal that are going to be noticeable. Drake Nugent at center, Miles Hinton. I think Michigan fans will be wowed a little bit just by the sheer size of some of these new players. Miles Hinton for one, Kenneth Grant another, just massive, large human beings. And that's the other reason why I think Michigan being on upset alert is pretty unlikely, just because of how stout Michigan is on the offensive line and defensive line. Michigan's physical advantage will be evident in this game at some point. Maybe that's not until the midway through the third quarter, but at some point, just the sheer depth and size of Michigan's lines. Michigan's offensive line this year features easily 8, 10, maybe even more guys that are Division I level starters. And then, of course, on the defensive line, haven't talked about that much other than Kenneth Grant, a lot of returning starters. Chris Jenkins, who's going to be a first-round draft pick next year in the NFL draft. Braden McGregor, Derek Moore. These guys are just studs, and that will be evident, I think, for a first-year starting quarterback for East Carolina. I don't expect them to get pushed around. I do expect them to score, but they're really going to have their hands full with Michigan's defensive line. And then, of course, Michigan's linebackers, very experienced, Junior Colson, Mike Barrett. These guys have played a lot of football, and their experience. If East Carolina has some success with a chunk play, or even when they score, there's not going to be a lot of panic from Michigan. This is an experienced veteran team that should win. I put a 95% chance Michigan winning the game. But again, I would stay away from that spread. That's just a lot of points to give up to in a first game of the season for any team, and against a team that is a bowl team from the year before that doesn't get blown out. East Carolina is just they don't get blown out when they lose. If you remember Tulane last year, which was quite a good team, and they actually won the Cotton Bowl dramatically at the end over USC. That was probably the best team that East Carolina played last year, and it was at Tulane, and they lost the game 24-9. So Tulane had quite a good offense and scored a lot of points against most teams, and at home against East Carolina, Tulane only won 24-9. So, and again, as I said, this team won at BYU last year. They played quite effectively at Cincinnati. This is a good football program, and they don't, they have an enthusiastic fan base, not nearly the size of fan base that Michigan has, but they're enthusiastic. They travel. They'll be excited to come to the Big House and show what they can do. I expect them to hang in there and make this a fairly competitive game. So that's not great news for Wolverine fans, but this could. It's nice to have a non-conference opponent that is more than just a scrimmage game. So should be a lot of fun. It's on the Peacock Network, noon Eastern time on Saturday. Enjoy the game. We'll be back next week for a recap of the game and preview of Michigan's next opponent.